All right, whatever. Here we go. Greetings and welcome to the Quantum Ogre Cast, the topical ttrpg podcast you were destined to encounter, no matter what choices you made. I have Will from Runeforged Games with me today. How are you doing, Will?
Hey, Jordan, I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing great. It was a nice day. I ran into an old friend. We'll talk a bit about that later. But you've got a adventure for ShadowDark we're going to talk a bit about today.
Yeah.
And we're going to show some of it off. So if you're listening today and you want to see more of it, make sure to go to YouTube and check out the video later. But you can still listen and I think get most of what's going on. So
yeah, I think so.
But yeah, we're going to talk cognitive load for game masters that has to do with like adventure design. And we're going to lean into a little bit of like ways that design has made prep better for game masters through adventures. And then the problem of Darkvision. We'll get into a bit of that. And of course, the tragedy of Ravenmere Manor. So stay tuned. We've got a lot to discuss. But first, here's a word from a sponsor.
Quantum Ogre Cast. Quantum Ogre Cast. Quantum Ogre Cast. Quantum Ogre Cast.
So yeah, you were saying like ShadowDark is your main game.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple other games that I want to try in the near future, but ShadowDark is definitely the one that I play the most right now.
Before ShadowDark, what did you play?
Yeah, so I actually came back to the hobby when a lot of people did with 5th edition. But before I jumped back into 5th edition, I played a game called 5 Torches Deep, which is actually like it's kind of a proto ShadowDark. They actually share a lot of DNA in common, so that was really fun. And then after that campaign, we switched over to 5th edition for a couple years. And then when ShadowDark came out, I was like, well, this has most of the stuff that I like about 5th edition, but it's kind of streamlined and it's like a lot more lethal. So it was a pretty clear choice for me to switch over. My players don't like it as much as 5th edition, but there are benefits to being the GM.
Yeah, for sure. We're probably going to get into one of those, which is cognitive load.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I was talking I ran to an old friend today, and we were just having coffee, like me and him and his kid.
That's cool.
And his kid's like a full blown college kid now, and he was talking about like his D&D game.
Yeah.
And he goes like the first thing he started talking about was his build, like his character concept, and like he's like I'm going to do like a bit of some sorcerer, storm sorcerer or something. I'm like so out of touch with it at this point. It's hilarious, but like it reminded me of something I kind of forgot about, which is like there's this whole other game outside the game.
Yep.
Where you're building your characters, your theory crafting, and all this stuff. And that all sort of goes away when you play ShadowDark.
It does, yeah. And I have at least 2 players that are very much into that side of things, and it's been a struggle for them to switch over to ShadowDark. They miss the build customization. They're definitely not as invested or involved in their characters as they were with 5th edition.
Yeah, and we don't have to go too far in this direction, but one of the struggles or the pulls I guess I always have with like the bonus or the extra options that have been introduced over time to ShadowDark, either like through third party or like Shadow Darklings, is like there are actually quite a lot of options now between classes and ancestries. But then there's this pool of like, do you allow your players to choose these options? Are they in the pool of like random options?
Right.
And then like how far can you take that before it sort of goes away from the spirit of what ShadowDark is, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
So I just thinking about it, like for you and your players, like what would you say for those players that are having a harder time transitioning to like such a simple game? Do you ever make exceptions, like allowing them to pick certain classes rather than like say roll for it or things like that?
Yeah, so there are definitely times when I let them pick their class. I don't make them roll in order. I let them assign their stats however they want to. Sometimes I'll let them pick their first talent if we want to go exceptionally like really high powered, like for a one shot or something. But I do want to caveat, like I'm playing mostly ShadowDark one shots and I'm not playing these long campaigns. So it's really easy for me to be like, okay, yeah, your characters are super overpowered for this one shot and it doesn't really affect anything down the line. So I think I play the game a little bit differently than most people do.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's just always I like to ask questions like this because it's always interesting to me. Like at the end of the day, it's like we want to create a fun experience for us and our players.
Yeah.
And I'm not really like, I enjoy, say, like rolling 3d6 down the line.
Yeah.
But I don't have that same expectation on my players.
Yes, correct.
So a lot of times I'm willing to make some exceptions. I'm not so dogmatic, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Sure.
About some of the like one way-isms or true like only way kind of stuff. But
yeah,
it's a fun hobby, and I think ShadowDark rests in its own special place within that. So
yeah, I like ShadowDark quite a bit. I've been playing it for like most of it is my main game for like two or so years now, and I am starting to look at other games. But I think ShadowDark is a really great system. So no shots fired in any capacity.
No, same here. In fact, it's become my group's like staple game that like even if we try something else, I think we'll fall back on ShadowDark at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a really great baseline.
I think it's a great game to introduce new players to as well, like to the hobby. It is a little bit more lethal, and you got to watch out for that piece of things. But in terms of just like the stuff that you have to know to get started, I feel like it's actually it's a lot simpler than 5th edition.
And also, yeah, like a lot of my players are new, but at the same time, I think for me, so I right now, if you're following my channel, you probably already know this, but I'm doing like this island crawl quasi West Marches style game. It's West Marches in everything but schedule, I guess. I still pick a day of the week and we do it.
Yeah, same.
But it's fun to see, like you're saying. I think the lethality doesn't come into play as much, or isn't much of a snag whenever it's like my game isn't centered around any one character or like
for sure
line. It's like it's open world. Character dies, it's very old school. We roll a new character, throw them into the party, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's very much the intention with how ShadowDark was designed to be played, for sure.
Yeah, but we wrote down a couple of topics I think would be fun to discuss here, and one of them was cognitive load.
Yeah,
and so you mentioned it's easier for players. I think it's easier for the game master.
Much.
And honestly, like one of the things as a guy with a full-time job, a father, doing all this dungeon tube stuff on the side, and even trying to write my own game, burnout is a big factor for me.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So anytime I can lessen the sort of cognitive load with prep, or even like at times I've been running for like 7 or 8 players at one time.
I can't do that. I applaud you. 4 is like the most I want to do, but I usually end up running for 5 or 6, and 4 is definitely my sweet spot.
But so you picked this as one of the conversations. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like, are there games that, like ShadowDark is obviously an example that we both relate to here, but are there games that you think do it well, or like from a design point, what do you think does work or doesn't work with games and game masters and cognitive load?
Yeah, so I will say that cognitive load is a huge thing for me. In my experience, it's almost always GM burnout that ends campaigns versus any sort of player issues or anything like that. And I think a big reason why that's the case is a lot of these bigger games like 5th edition, like Pathfinder, there's just so much going on. There's so much burden placed on the GM to be managing all these different things. Like the stat block for like a basic goblin is like half a page or something crazy. And that's just too much, especially if you want to be running multiple different types of creatures in the same encounter. So I am a huge fan of games like ShadowDark, try to keep things very simple. They really go out of their way to do layout in such a way that pretty much everything that you need for a given encounter is going to be on a single page or at least a 2-page spread. And that makes things a lot easier for the GM, not having to flip back and forth between different sections of the book, not having to keep all these really complex rules in their head at any given time, giving GMs latitude to do the rulings over rules that we see so commonly in the OSR. So this is a really big thing for me. I think that other games that are doing this well right now, of the few that I am aware of, the Nimble 2.0 is one of these things. I'm very excited to try Nimble. I think this is basically like what I wanted 5.5 or 6th edition to be. And I was really disappointed when they actually kind of doubled down on I don't know if complexity is really the right word, but just like
density, maybe?
Yeah, just how much stuff there is. I think density is a good term. So Nimble's a game that I'm really excited about. And then I'm also looking at the new Twilight Sword, which is kind of a Zelda
I saw that. I saw the
Yeah.
Kickstarter. Yeah.
Yeah. So the PDFs for that just came in recently. I was looking at it today, and that also seems like a fairly light system, although it does have some weird things around initiative and stuff. But yeah, I think those are the games that I'm aware of that I'm interested in that have this kind of like lower cognitive load than something like 5th edition or Pathfinder.
Yeah, it's interesting. Nimble, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I looked at Nimble and I thought the same thing. Like I also have those players who they appreciate builds, they appreciate encounters that are a little bit more granular, that have a little bit more of that like 5-foot step kind of stuff going on. And I get it. It's fun. It's our roots are wargaming, right? Like, of course, people like the fighting. That's no surprise to me. But it's also like I think games like Nimble can still do that feel really well without having to sort of sift through the density of text. And I like what you said, because like a huge part of either the OSR or just this new SR NSR emergent movement to me has been a changing of layout and design. Like it really makes a huge difference when you need to reference materials in the moment, and you can just look at the page and you're like, okay, there are 5 bullet points here about combat, and I can just glance at them again and remind myself, like, while someone's deciding what they're doing or whatever have you. Nimble is a perfect example, and I'm really glad to see that there are a lot of games still coming out that are sort of like merging those gaps between like a light system and a heavy system, because
100%.
I totally get it. Like I don't want a game that's so thin that you have no excitement about leveling up, let's say.
I think that's actually a huge danger. This is leveling up is like such a huge part of the power fantasy. It's like, I think it's a lot of what players show up for. You have to be really, really careful about making that system vanilla or uninteresting. And I think ShadowDark is actually kind of right on that line in some cases. So I would like to see a little bit more versatility, a little bit more options, but I understand that goes against the grain for how the game was designed. So I get that.
Yeah, and for those people, I've been recommending more of like your Vagabonds or Nimble. Just because they have a little bit more player option. It's a little less like roll randomly, get what you get. A little bit more of like, I do want to be able to have my fighter who does this one niche kind of thing. Which I do think is cool. I think it's fun. And like you said, it's a power fantasy. I totally get that there are people on the other side that it's not always my preference.
For sure.
But I'm glad to both see, like you're saying, something that aims to be a better tool for a game master and help with those things like cognitive load, and yet still supply that feel that a player is looking for.
100%. And I think Nimble actually, I haven't played it yet, but having read through it, it looks like it does a pretty good job of balancing those two things. So I'm excited to try it out.
Yeah, I've only played it a few times, but I had fun on the player side. I don't know what it's like from the GM side of the screen yet, but it seemed pretty straightforward. It's the you can open the books and look at it, and you're like, okay, I'm not gonna have to spend 3 weeks ahead of my first session studying, so that's always a win in my book.
And I think that, I don't know if this is kind of off topic, but I tried to run Curse of Strahd. I did run Curse of Strahd in 5th edition. Trying to run one of these huge, long campaigns that you see in 5th edition is so difficult. You got to read through the whole thing front to back. Then you got to break out your notes. You probably got to go reference some videos. You're trying to figure out how to make this a cohesive thing. And it's just such a breath of fresh air. We talked about the layout and formatting of kind of the OSR, new SR stuff. It's just so different. And it's so much better laid out. It does such a better job of presenting the GM with pretty much like a broad overview of the campaign right up front. The OSR folks have got this stuff figured out in a way that WotC is really, really struggling with. And I understand there are different constraints and stuff, but it's kind of crazy how much better the indie stuff is than the stuff made by the huge corporations. So
and if my audience is probably like, oh boy, here we go. I've talked about adventure design and layout till I'm blue in the face, but they're things that I find super important. I bounce off really hard from a book that is just page after page of text that I'm going to have to find the one line of detail that I actually need. And the thing is, like, you know, I'm designing my own game right now, and I'm always challenging myself to say, like, am I just doing this because it's the precedent that's set?
Yeah.
And is there a better way? You know, like, can I bullet point these sort of things, and maybe not even bullet point. Can I draw a picture that
Yeah.
tells you what you need to know about this adventure, so you can look at it at a glance and say, okay, I may not have all the details yet, but I get how to run this, you
Yeah.
know, without that sort of over prep, right? Um, I think that's a trap that's so easy to fall into,
Mhm.
especially, you know, and to touch on something you said about specifically like Curse of Strahd, I've done it. You know, I tried to run not Storm King's Thunder. I always mix these up. Rime of the Frost Maiden.
Yeah, another good one.
It's such a cool adventure.
Yeah, but it's hard to get into.
Yeah, and yeah, and I think like it's okay to have change, especially in like, you know, who was I talking to the other day? I think it was maybe Zach Goins from Limithron.
Yeah.
At the time we're recording this, this just came out, but we had talked probably a week ago.
Yeah.
And he was talking about like some of the advancements that just have happened in like print and in literature in general
Okay.
that are really fascinating, because you can like, I think he said like you could walk into a Barnes and Noble, you could find a book where they have like the extra fold out page
Mhm.
in like an interesting way that they're doing a diagram or an explanation, and like we're sitting here in the past doing books the ways we've done it for 50 years in like D&D, and not like adapting these new ideas and formats when they could be really beneficial to even indie publishers, you know.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with this stuff. Yeah.
Well, just that there are ways now to relay information, or different, like, you know, book spreads, or even like, you know, here's an example I love to share. Knock magazine has those covers that go around the magazine that you can open up, and they have like even more information on the inside, or almost it becomes like a GM screen with like roll tables and things like that. Just like the ways that we can present information, whether it's a game or an adventure, just all these like brilliant little ideas that, you know, it's like, why are we doing it the way we did it 50 years ago? You know?
Yeah, and I think it also goes like making use of the space you have available, and really trying to think through like what is the best way to present this information in a way that's going to make it as easy as possible for the GM to, you know, understand what's going on and run to the table. That's huge for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so we were talking about a little bit before the cameras came on, like over prep and minimal prep, right?
Yeah.
Like, have you seen any great tools in recent years, or like any products that really do just a great example of like a way that you can sort of minimize, like a practical way to minimize your prep as a game master?
Yeah, so I think it's some of the stuff that we've already talked about. In particular, I think ShadowDark and OSE do a really good job of this. I'm sure there's other games that do this as well. Layout and formatting is a huge part of it. Making sure that there's a page right up front that tells the GM, that gives them like a quick high-level overview of all the stuff they need to know about the adventure, like at a very high level. A separate section for stuff that the players need to know coming into it, and have those things be differentiated from each other and not be built into the same long paragraphs. So the GM is saying they're trying to pick out, you know, what's for me, what's for them. I think that's a big part of it. I think that the layout and stuff that we've talked about in terms of having everything that you need to run a single encounter or area, either on a single page or a single 2-page spread, is very important. So you're not flipping back and forth. Another big part of this is make sure that the monster stat blocks and relevant items are actually on the page where you need them. So again, you're not having to go to a different book to go look up the stat blocks. Those are big things for me.
Yeah, just to agree with what you're saying there. Like when I started to get the like the Mary Mushman,
they're fantastic.
Exalted Funeral, I can't remember which it is, but they're the adventures that for Old School Essentials.
Yeah.
And you'll open them up, like Incandescent Grotto is the example I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
You open it up, and just like you're saying, you know, monster stat block right there on the page, a zoom in of the portion of the dungeon that you're on that same page with all the rooms that it shows. And like, I just remember flipping through it and being like, like
of
mind
course,
blown.
this is so why have we not been doing this the whole time? Like, it makes so much sense. And I admit, I don't, the part with the mini maps, I have not done that in my own work yet, but I see a lot of other people in the ShadowDark space doing it. I'm like, that's a really good idea. I should probably do that, but I just always run out of room on the page. So, but yeah, it's really cool. And the people that go the extra mile to hyperlink all their little mini maps, so you click on them and it just goes right to the page. Like, oh man, that's a level of dedication that I have not unlocked.
Yeah, I love it. And we're seeing like all kinds of stuff like that too. Like, I haven't personally checked this out, but Zach, a friend of mine who's making a game called Peasantry,
Okay,
he was telling me it's a little indie game that's, I think, coming out pretty soon. But he was telling me about how, I think it was Tales of Argosa sets up their adventure, and it's basically like it starts like zoomed out, of the room, like the description, then zoom in a little bit, like bullet points and stuff, to the things that interact with, and then zoom in one more time to the like little details. And I thought, like, that's such a brilliant way to like lay out room design in an adventure, because it like,
I agree.
You just follow, your eye follows the sheet down, to find the detail you're looking for, whether it's like you need the big picture or the little detail at the end. And I was just like, that sounds so cool. And I guess I need to pick up Tales from Argosa, because it sounds like really well designed.
Yeah, I think that's another really good point. I actually think ShadowDark does this to some extent, where they have like they have the keywords bolded, they got a little bit of descriptor up there at the top, and then the bolded areas get more attention down further. I really like this. I think this speaks again to how layout can make it easier for a GM to run at the table without having to do a ton of prep beforehand. So yeah, all useful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and while we're talking about adventure design, let's talk about yours. That's you have a one that's in Kickstarter right now.
Yeah.
By the time this airs, I think the Kickstarter will just have ended.
Yeah, totally fine. It'll be available on drive-thru when it's over at some point.
But yeah, Tragedy of Ravenmere Manor. It's like a gothic horror, which I'm getting. Peter from Tales from Elsewhere has pushed me into being more interested in horror recently, so this is right up my alley at the moment. But just give your pitch for the adventure, and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So Tragedy of Ravenmere Manor is a gothic horror one-shot adventure for ShadowDark, designed for levels 3 and 4, and it can be run in roughly about a 4-hour session. Although there are some mechanics presented that allow you to, quote unquote, force the final climactic encounter whenever is appropriate from a time limit perspective. So if you only have 3 hours, you can do it that way instead. The adventure is basically go into the cursed/haunted manor and retrieve the Lord's signet ring and make it out alive, because there's a lot of undead crawling around the manor and other terrible things. So a lot of it is just exploring the manor, trying to find all sorts of magical goodies, escaping with the signet ring if you can, and trying to piece together what actually happened that caused the manor to fall into this cursed and decrepit state. So that's a big part of the mystery.
Cool. Oh man, I don't know if you know this, but one of my all-time favorite adventures is The Waking of Willoughby Hall.
Yeah, fantastic. This has been Milton's, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is a manor, and it's fun, and I've run it for my family. I've run it for some friends, and I love. There's something about like getting out of the dungeon. As much as I love a good dungeon crawl, I am a fan of like even mega dungeons to an extent. But something about being in like an old creepy manor, and like people love the like kind of Clue vibes or whatever, there's something about that setting that they really and it leans well into horror, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this makes for a fantastic ShadowDark adventure. There's a lot of exploration. There's a lot of room for various different treasures going all throughout. Lots of different types of random encounters and stuff like that. Also, you've also got kind of a story element in the background, like what happened here, like how did this happen, like how did we get to this place? I think all those things tied together creates for a really cool atmosphere and adventure.
And actually, now that I think about it, that adventure also has like a built-in mechanic that like as you play the pillars sort of break. Hopefully I guess spoilers
for Waking of Willoughby Hall.
Waking of Willoughby Hall if you're listening. But it has this sort of built-in mechanic that if you do take too long or you dilly-dally whatever, the house starts to come alive,
which is very cool.
And things get worse and worse as you linger, and it has that sort of like built-in mechanic that is going to end the game probably one way or another if you stay
Yeah.
around too long. And I love that. I love that you're saying yours has this too, because I think that's something, especially if you're running this as a one shot.
Yeah, 100%.
You need at the time of this, I also just ran for crit not long ago, and I ended up building in my own sort of timer mechanics to each adventure because I wanted to make sure we had an ending, by that.
Yes, it's so huge.
Yeah. So
important.
If you want to talk about it, I don't know if that's a spoiler.
I'm happy to talk about it. I'm going to go full spoiler.
Okay.
Yeah. Would you like me to share my screen, or do you just want me to talk about it?
If you want to, absolutely.
Okay.
I don't know how to look on this website here, but
there we go.
Boom. Look at that.
Yeah. All right. Tragedy of Raven Manor, Gothic Horror Adventure levels 3 to 4. We got some awesome art here. I think this is Christopher Castilla via the Merry Manticore. We got our credits and legal page here. A ton of different folks went into the creation of adventure. When you get time, definitely scroll through. You'll probably see some familiar names. Also, some links in there to some community folks that help with playtesting and proofreading. So, really appreciate those folks.
Real quick, can I ask? Is that I follow someone on Instagram, Castillo Crawler, I think.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I just know it's Christopher Castillo, and I got it off Drive Through RPG, and it's the Merry Manticore.
Well, if that's the same guy, I love his art.
Yeah, dude. There's so much cool art in the book. A lot of different artists, including one of my players, Hillary. She actually created the House Ravenmere signet ring, which you can see down here in the bottom right. So very cool. We talked about accessibility early. There is, of course, a table of contents. It is fully hyperlinked, so you can jump directly to the section of the book that you need to go to and navigate back and forth very quickly. I've got a quick introduction here that tells you the level range for the adventure, how long it takes to run. It can either be run as a one-shot. I think it would be great to run for Halloween, or as part of a longer dark fantasy or horror campaign. There's a section down here for supplemental materials, which are basically the player-facing maps for the 3 levels of the manor. There are both grayscale and color versions for people who want either one of those options. Next section here is just a little bit of player-facing info. You can read this verbatim to your players to give them a little bit of an idea of what's going on in this adventure. Long story short, a man named Victor has hired the party to go into this haunted/cursed manor to receive his presumably dead brother's signet ring. But of course, there will be plenty of challenges along the way. And Victor's only stipulation is that you can take any treasure that you find as long as you retrieve the signet ring and you don't go into the family vaults. Which, of course, I'm sure the players will, may or may not decide to follow.
Who's not going to go for that juicy bait?
As I was like, hey, guys, we have 4 hours to play tonight. Something bad is going to happen in exactly 3 hours and 15 minutes from now. So you have until that amount of time to explore the manor. And yeah.
I love that kind of stuff, especially if you're playing it like a con, or it's like some buddies are in town. You have one night to play. You're like, all right, guys, we have a clock. It's 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I find this really useful. I think that it gets the players going. They're like, okay, we gotta. So it's this really great balance between like, okay, we have to explore everything, but we also have to get through this as quickly as possible, so we don't get caught in a bad position when the bad stuff happens. So that's kind of my preference. One thing that I'm really serious about is making sure that the monster stat blocks for the relevant creatures are on the appropriate pages, including on the random encounter table. So if you're rolling a random encounter, everything that you need to run this encounter is here on this page. So both the combat encounters, as well as the cold spot special encounter. This is like very similar to what you would see in some sort of haunted mansion for people who are into paranormal stuff. Basically, this is just a way that I can have some impactful random encounters that don't always revolve around combat. Because especially in a one shot that's focused on exploring as much of an area as possible, I don't want to get bogged down in these huge long combat encounters as a result of random encounters, but I do still want that threat to be there if it needs to be. One thing I find in one shots is that my players, because they know it's a one shot, they're not necessarily interacting with gold in the same way that they would. And that makes gold kind of useless in these one shots. So I created this offering plate here, which is an offering plate St. Agnes. You can sacrifice gold, gems, or other valuables that you have in order to get some sort of blessings or boons. So
that's a cool idea.
Minor healing, you can get some luck tokens, stuff like that. And again, it just adds a way for gold to be useful in this one shot format.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's always like a constant problem. It's like, how can we be excited about this treasure if we don't get to spend it?
100%. That's exactly the thing that I got. And I got to the point where my players weren't even picking it up. I'm like, well, that just feels wrong. So let's put some stuff in these one shots that has gold, have some sort of use.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. But yeah.
And if they've cashed in some of that money they found, they can they'll have a few items with which to deal with her a little
Yeah,
better.
absolutely. They might be topped off at full health for that final encounter. They may have a few extra luck tokens to spend to make sure they get off that critical cure wounds when they really need it. So this really is the adventure is really designed in such a way that most of the non-mandatory fight, most of the mandatory fights in the manor are pretty simple. But really, it is about making sure that you're retaining as much of your resources as possible for this final encounter because it is very, very difficult. So, creative players, players who are really nasty in combat, people who are making use of their environment, those are the folks that are really going to excel in this final encounter. But they're very unlikely to die before that.
Yeah, it's a war of attrition till you
Yes.
get to the final boss.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't really necessarily want characters dying early on in the adventure. I just want them so sufficiently weakened that they really have to make a very serious decision about whether or not they actually want to try and engage with this final encounter, or if they just want to get the ring and get out.
Well, and I want to ask, since we do have like basically your portfolio pictured here.
Yeah.
If you're listening, we have Against the Cult of the Crimson Hand, Wicked Witch of the Woods, and Shadows of Camelot.
Yeah.
Would you say that there are like similar styles or implementations that you put into those adventures?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is definitely a work in progress. Against the Cold Crimson Hand was the first one that I ever did. I was very happy with it, but I've definitely been iterating on things as I've gone. Wicked Witch of the Woods was another level 1 adventure that I did. That's actually the first one in this kind of like folk horror, folklore adjacent setting that I'm building for ShadowDark. So Wicked Witch of the Woods is first, Tragedy of Raven Manor is second, and then I've got a couple others that are coming out later this year that I'm also really excited about. And then Shadows of Camelot is my King Arthur inspired campaign setting for ShadowDark that also blends in a few elements of Robin Hood as well, and some Irish folklore thrown in for good measure. So yeah, some really cool stuff here. Links to all that stuff can be found in the PDF and on my drive-through. So yeah,
and I'll put them down below for this video.
Awesome.
But yeah, you actually sent me Shadows of Camelot, and I looked at it and I was like, I need to plug this into it's going to be an island in my island crawl adventure. So
that's cool. I love that. Let me know how it goes if you end up using it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've seen a growing trend of this what happens next kind of stuff.
Yeah.
In adventure design or even like hex scrolls and things like that. And I love to see it because it doesn't just let your adventure sort of like happen and die out. It lets you like continue it and like take a piece of it and inject it to the rest of your world or your campaign. So I just love seeing that.
Yeah, I love the idea of this. Since I run these as one shots, I'm probably not ever going to use these, but I just love the idea that they exist and that the choices that the players have made throughout the course of this one adventure may come to haunt them or benefit them down the line. I just love that idea.
Yeah, and it follows that principle, which I believe strongly in, which is like show the impact of the character's choices.
So. Absolutely, 100%. But yeah, so that is a Tragedy of Ravenmere Manor. It's available when we're filming this. It's available on Kickstarter. The Kickstarter ends on July 14th. But once backers have had a chance to get their stuff, it will also be available on Drive-Thru RPG in the not too distant future. So if you're interested, you'll just have to wait a little while, and then hopefully you'll be able to go pick it up there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love a good manor adventure. It seems like you put a lot of thought into both.
Thank you.
The themes and the sort of like mystery of it, which is fun to see. Because like sometimes you do a dungeon crawl and it's like that was a ton of fun. I don't remember anything from it.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I'm not a huge fan of those. I really want the players to remember some of the story beats and stuff. I want, oh yeah, that was that cool Cursed Manor adventure where the guy tried to betray us. Like, yeah, that's my jam. Yeah.
No, I'm right there with you. I don't think like I'm not like so far that like story is the only thing that matters, but I like there to be threads that run through an adventure.
Yeah.
And especially if they're easy to implement like that, where like you have the shattered mirrors and you have like the cold curse and all these different ways to counter it and things like that. So it looks cool. I would love to run this.
Yeah, thanks, man. I will make sure. I think you've got a copy, but once the official one comes out, I'll make sure that you get another copy as well, so you can run it if you want to.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one. So one of the things we sort of discussed potentially talking about was the problem of Darkvision.
Yeah.
So many games, almost every character either has dark vision or has something like a light spell that essentially is going to make darkness not matter.
Yeah.
Because games like ShadowDark put such an emphasis on darkness and they make it potent again by not.
Yeah, it's really scary.
no character has access to Darkvision
Mhm.
as is, which I think is a vast improvement over like, because here's what always ends up happening. It's like I played 5th edition games, ran entire campaigns where like we're in a cavern and someone goes, "Wait, can my character see anything in here?"
Yeah.
Oh, I'm the only human.
Yeah, I hate that too.
And it's like, yeah, I guess we need to, for your sake, light a torch. And then everyone else kind of groans because then they're like, well, the monsters will see us. And it sort of like takes something that should be tense and
Yeah.
should matter to what's happening
Yeah.
and completely dissipates it,
I 100% agree. I think personally, I either want light to really matter or I don't want to worry about it at all.
Yeah.
I don't want to have one character having to deal with it and one character not having to deal with it. I have no interest in micromanaging it at that level.
Or at the very least, if somehow you do have a character with dark vision, they become your scout, like they're your eyes
Yeah.
ahead of the torch or whatever.
Yeah,
which can create its own can of worms, but yeah, like you're saying, it needs to matter.
Yeah, I will say that like it would probably be better if it was inverted and there was one person who had dark vision and nobody else did, rather than 5 people that have it and one person that doesn't. I don't care for that. Also, I run very human-centric games on purpose, often because they don't have dark vision, and just because I like those kind of settings better. But yeah, so I'm a big fan, especially for ShadowDark. Like let's make light matter and let's make it matter for everybody.
Yeah, and it really separates, I think, crawling, like dungeon crawling, from
Yeah.
everything else.
For sure.
Because those timers come on.
Mhm.
If you're playing ShadowDark, the hour timers come on, and you start going, okay, well, let's not linger too long, and like let's make some decisions. Let's keep things moving.
Yeah.
We're in the dark now, and everything knows where we are.
Yeah,
That's
for
a
sure.
very different feel. So
It is. I also play almost all my games on virtual tabletops, and I have the dynamic lighting enabled,
that's
and everyone can have their own torch if they want to. The moments that you get when one player walks into the room and they're the only person that sees what's actually happening, and their reaction, and everyone else is trying to gauge what's happening based on the reaction, is so cool. And then like when the light goes out and they're in the middle of a fight and everyone starts panicking because they themselves cannot see what's going on, it's just a very different. I love this. I love the immersion that you get from that. I don't know if that's the right word, but the players are feeling what their characters are feeling, and that feels very good to me. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I'm going to give 2 examples because I'm the sort of technology adverse game master who literally draws a hand-drawn map, then takes a picture and uploads it to a VTT. But I played in a game with Peter. We played Tales from Elsewhere, and there was a moment where one character had a lantern because it's like a cowboy kind of game.
Yeah.
And he opened the door and the light shone into the room and suddenly we saw all these zombies. And it was like,
that's cool.
It was an intense moment because a lot of enemies is bad news when you got a 6-shooter, that you got to reload every bullet. So that's so cool. I do love when you can make that impact of light like that really feel seen in like a VTT sort of situation.
Yeah.
It adds a dynamic that you might miss if you're just playing and you're forgetting, like, oh yeah, does anyone have a torch lit? Oh yeah, there's a bunch of zombies. By the way,
it's so cool. I love it so much. VTTs can be a pain in the butt, but man, the dynamic lighting is it's hard to beat. I find mapping to be very difficult in person, to the point where I actually run a VTT in person a lot of times because I don't want to deal with physical mapping. I know that's like heresy to a lot of folks.
No. Can I ask, do you use one of those? Do you have like one of those table setups, or do you just?
Yeah, I have a TV. I have a TV that I set on the table, and it's like encased and stuff.
I'm jealous of that.
It's very cool.
I think I would learn to use a VTT if I had that.
It's cool.
Yeah, I'm jealous of the folks. Sometimes I see games, and it is neat too because you could just do things with it that you can't with pen and paper. Just
100%
point blank. That's neat. I mean, maybe one day if I can convince the wife that we need, for some reason, we need to put a TV inside of a table.
I highly recommend. But yeah, I get there's a barrier to entry.
That's cool though. I don't want to tread too much over the same territory, but yeah, it's funny that we have this long tradition in this hobby of dark vision when it's sort of antithetical to like a lot of the style of gameplay.
Yeah.
And so each game that comes out has to probably make a decision point of like, are we going to do it at all, or are we just going to ignore it? Because
Yeah.
and it's funny that it really doesn't happen in a lot of other genres. Like, I don't think there's too many sci-fi games. I'm going to guess there aren't too many sci-fi games where you have a lot of characters with like infravision or night vision and stuff like that. It seems like it's just sort of a D&D problem, you know?
Yeah, I'm really not sure. I don't play much. I don't play many other genres besides fantasy, so I can't speak to that piece of it. But I will say, like, my touchstone has always been Lord of the Rings. They're going through Moria. They've got torches. They've got Gandalf's light spell. Like, I don't think Legolas is there doing Darkvision on the side. So, you know, maybe I'm misunderstanding how elves and Tolkien work. But yeah, my touchstones have always been like, yeah, no, when you go into dark places, you have a light source. You're not just fighting in the dark. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even within that, like Lord of the Rings, D&D, those examples,
Yeah.
I think it's also been years of like misinterpreting rules. Because you know, there's been videos out there, I'm sure you can find them, where people are like, "You've been reading Darkvision wrong."
Yeah.
And it's really like you can see to this extent a black and white, and then no detail after or something.
Yeah.
So,
and I respect the level of pedantics that is required, you know, to be like, no. But when you're a GM and you're at the table and you're trying to play an actual game with people who have different levels of dark vision, and some people have it and some people don't, like, I'm not going to sit here and describe how it looks to you, and then I'm going to describe how it looks to you, and then everyone who doesn't have dark vision, I'm not going to do that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, and it also just pulls you out of it. Quick.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, you tell me what I can see, and then I'll move forward. And
Yeah.
you know, it just grinds things to a halt. So
yeah,
it's an interesting conversation, I think, to have, because if you're out there and you're like designing a game, or even like maybe your game has some dark vision and you're trying to decide like, do I want it to matter? It's important to consider like what effect it has on gameplay and like tension, right? Like,
yeah,
because I think originally darkness is a point of tension. No one likes to be in a situation where they can't see.
yeah.
But yeah, it's and it just gets hand waved so often that I thought it'd be something interesting to sort of dissect.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's like exactly what you said. It depends what type of game you're running, and there's definitely a case to be made if you're playing a really simulationist game and you wanna get really deep into like the different levels of dark vision. I will not stop you. But yeah, for me at my table, I either want it to matter but be simple to handle, like ShadowDark, or I don't want it to matter at all. And that's kind of where I land. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Well, thank you, Will, so much for being here. I've been on your show, and it was nice to sort of return the favor and get to chat again.
Absolutely. It was a really good time. I hope we get to do it again in the future.
Yeah, and if you haven't checked out Will's channel, there's gonna be a link in the description below to both your adventures and things you've written for ShadowDark, as well as just where you talk about a lot of this stuff. Because that's how I originally found you.
Cool.
You had a lot of videos digging into ShadowDark design and adventure design and stuff like that. So,
Oh, awesome. I love that series. I'm glad people found it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will. I'll ask you one more question. Do you have anything else coming up or on the horizon that you want to shout out before we go here?
Yeah, I do. I've got 2 more adventures I'm trying to put out this year. One of them is a Halloween / fantasy themed Thanksgiving adventure. I think it's gonna be something along the lines of the Harvest of Hallows Eve. And then I've also got a Christmas themed adventure I'd like to put out this year as well. It was the night before solstice. So I'm hoping to get both those out by the end of the year. We'll see how I do.
I love it because personally, I'm always looking for excuses to try to coax my family into playing games.
Yes.
So I think a holiday themed adventure is perfect for that. So
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're trying to get brand newbies, Wicked Witch of the Woods, I originally wrote to run for my mom who had never played a tabletop game before. That video is on my channel where I do a live play with her. Super easy, super friendly for new people. You can play it solo, like just you and one player is how I ran it with my mom. And it's built to scale from anywhere from 1 player to 6 players. So yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thank you again for being here, and thank you guys for watching. And we'll see you next time in the dungeon, no matter what choices you make.
Bye, y'all. Choose wisely.